Back for a bruising this season is Vinny Holloway from Brooksfield Living.
Hello, Ed.
Vinny, welcome back to The Deal.
Nice to see you again.
Now, last season, you managed to get a deal from the deal makers, but there are some new people in town this time. Who's going to be toughest of the three deal makers, do you think?
I think Mickey Limmer.
Mickey, the Duke of Deals. And what project are you presenting today, and how does it compare to last season?
Last season, I presented a small townhouse development with 2 and 3 bedroom homes in Spraydon, and they were 550 to 700,000. And this time, I'm presenting $2.3 million standalone homes in Fendalton, Christchurch.
So multi-million-dollar new builds. Do you reckon you're going to get it past the deal makers?
Well, I'm hoping so, because I do think that it's a good area for an investment, and predominantly the interest has been for owner-occupiers, but they're lovely homes and they're in a good area, so I'd like to see.
And again, a couple of different changes this season. Last time we took your properties when we got the deal and we sold them on to investors. This time, if you get a yes from the deal makers, if you make that deal, then anybody watching at home will have the ability to purchase these homes. Vinny, last question for you. What are you worried that they're going to ask?
I think the biggest possible issue with these homes is that they don't have a high enough net yield.
Well, Vinny, thanks very much. We wish you the best of luck. Go and see the deal makers.
Thank you.
So a different set of rules this season. If Vinny can get a deal again, you at home will have the chance to invest in his development. But will these pricey properties impress, or will the deal implode?
Hello again, deal makers.
It's time to let the deal makers decide. This is The Deal.
Vinny, are you going to tell us about the deal?
Oh, yes, Andrew, thank you for asking. This is 104 Glandovey Road, Fendalton, and it's made up of 7 standalone 5-bedroom homes. Most of them have 2.5, some of them have 3.5 bathrooms. They're in an extremely good area on a really well-renowned street, and they're 230 square metres each on around 400 square metres of land approximately, ranging from 2.3 to 2.4 million. And they have a rent appraisal at around $1,200 to $1,500 a week.
The Duke of Deals does not look impressed. But what will the other deal makers think?
Any initial questions?
Should we see the model?
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see what 2.4 million buys.
Like last season, the young developer has brought his high school diorama, hoping to wow the deal makers. These multi-million-dollar properties are the most expensive to ever appear on the deal. They certainly are lavish, but does that make them a lucrative investment? The deal makers have gone in for a closer look.
The reason that we've chosen this style of architecture is it's a colonial Georgian revival, which has been extremely popular in Fendalton since the 1920s and 30s, from architects like Heathcote Halmore and Cecil Wood, who are famous Christchurch Georgian revival architects, and this style is really coveted in Fendalton, and a lot of people buying houses there want to get these, but there's actually not a whole lot of them around Fendalton anymore, especially after the earthquake. So we're suspecting that these will be extremely popular with people who want a new home but also still want that Fendalton feel.
So Vinny, for people that don't know where Fendalton is, tell us about Fendalton.
Fendalton is essentially the Remuera of Christchurch, so it's got the good school zones, it's close to the city, and it's well known for large homes with big gardens. It's generally not developable in a sense like what we would usually do, so it's not able to be developed with high density housing. So you're allowed to develop homes down to around 400 to 450 square metre plots. So it's quite rare that you'd get a development in there with new homes, because there's not many sections left that you can actually cut down to 450.
And Vinny, did I hear you right? 2.3 to 2.4 mil.
You did.
It's expensive.
It is expensive, but it's certainly not out of line with the other values in the area for what they are. Yeah.
Hi, Vinny. Vanessa here.
Hello.
Hi. Hey, just first of all, really impressed for a young kid like yourself who's just come from school with his school blazer on to present a $2.4 million home.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, I know you're not at school, but I'm just looking through this and I'm looking at the position. You know it's in a flood zone, right? The development you're doing?
Yes, we do, and we've obviously got the Wairarapa stream out the back. Just a note though, a lot of developments in Christchurch, because of where they're situated in and around the city, are in flood zones, and we deal with that a lot with most of our homes. We've built them in a way that puts them above the 1 in 200 year flood levels. So the site, we've never seen the site underwater, and I've known the site for 5-6 years, but that could potentially happen one day, but the houses are high enough.
So what do you do to protect against that?
Well, the only thing you can really do is put the house up high enough, and the other thing that's really important as well is that you don't build the site up too much, because effectively for every 1 cubic metre of fill you put into the site is 1 cubic metre of water that can't go elsewhere. So making sure that there's lots of room through here if the river does come up over, that it has like a lot of space to move, and also not putting any solid fences down, because that effectively creates like a dam. Down the back, within 10 metres of the waterway, we plant native plants which are very good at soaking up excess water if it was ever to flood as well.
So if we have a 100-year flood, those plants should do it.
Oh, a 1 in 200 and they'll be fine.
Finny, I'm looking through your property pack here, and it's very glossy and beautiful, but it doesn't really tell me much about Brooksfield.
We have built around 500 houses in Christchurch, Vanessa, and predominantly we build more affordable homes, so around sort of $600,000 to $800,000 in areas like Edgware, St Albans, Braden, Sydenham. And we design them all in a classical style, so that's either like an early colonial New Zealand style, Georgian, Victorian, just depending on like what the area suits and what our purchasers are after at the time. But one style that we've started doing even in more affordable homes is this Georgian revival.
Given the cost of the build, have you already got some proof of concept? Have you gone and been able to complete that previously?
That sort of house?
No, that sort of value for that sort of house.
No, we haven't. These are by far, actually, we have, if this answers your question, we have built houses before, like at the moment we're building an apartment that was $4 million. But as a dense development, like this, we haven't built this many sort of $2.5 million homes in one lot, if that answers your question.
Do the type of people that want to buy these properties as an owner-occupier tend to be older generation because of the style? And then how are you dealing with that in terms of your design? What features are there for older people?
So the biggest, the interest we've had to date has predominantly been from folks who live in the area, who live in a larger house and a larger piece of land and want to downsize. They don't usually have kids at home. They don't want to deal with the pool or the garden or the big house anymore. And one thing that we have done with these homes for that reason is to put lifts in them. So we've actually provisioned them all to have lifts, and if people do want to have lifts, they can. We've also made the gardens, they're on 400 square metre sections, so they're not huge, but they're certainly big enough. But we've made sure that the garden's relatively easy to take care of. We've also got a residents association which we will run once it's complete, which will look after all the gardens around the street and through the shared laneway area.
When are they due to complete?
They're due for completion in 2025, May, June.
You said you've done about 500 properties so far. How often do you complete on time?
That's a good question. For the development manager, don't want to answer.
You kind of should know.
Well, it's actually, so in the business, I look after sales and design. And my business partner, Oliver, he looks after development, finance, and things like making sure developments get completed on time.
Vinny, I'm going to let Andrew talk about the yield, but for me, I'm more concerned about the resale value.
Sure.
What's your thoughts on that? What's your predictions?
We've seen plenty of houses in the area sell that are very comparable with this, 400 to 600 square metre sections, double garages, 4 or 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and they're selling depending on the exact street and the style of house and that sort of thing, and the street appeal and all those little bits and pieces. They're selling for around about 2.1 to 2.9 million. So I actually think, if anything, they're probably underpriced, but that price works for us.
It's very expensive for something.
Yeah, very expensive, but when you compare it to what else is in the area, very expensive when you compare it to a $600,000 townhouse, but when you compare it to what the people who are buying them are coming out of, they're actually quite affordable. To give you an idea, like the Dream Fendleton house, which is 1,000 square metre section, 400 square metre house with a pool, is around about 4 million if it's in the right street at the moment. So if you're coming out of that house into this, it's affordable and you're still getting the same luxury. You just don't have the land size and maybe the swimming pool.
Vinny, tell me about why do we need 5 bedrooms in a downsizer's home?
Interesting question, Michael. And to answer that,
So make it easier.
It's really Michael though, isn't it? The reason that we've done 5 bedrooms is when we were designing them, we designed them as a 3, possibly 4 bedroom house across 2 levels. And something that we've started doing recently, which works really well, is actually using the attic space. So your second floor finishes there, basically, and your second floor or your third level is completely within the roof. So it's kind of bonus space. So we thought we may as well use that, put 2 extra bedrooms. The feedback that we've had from that is that they won't often get used, but I do know that if you've got older kids who are going to come home for Christmas and all of that sort of thing, and the purchasers looking at these, they do think about the once in a year events and they buy their houses around them, which is pretty wild. But they do want to make sure that they can have their kids and possibly their grandkids stay. So predominantly they're probably going to get used as a 1 to 2 bedroom home if they're an older couple. But it's just about having that extra room, and because we could afford to use the space in the roof anyway, it made sense.
And Vinny, speaking of big numbers, what's the yield on this as an investment?
The yield is around about 2.8%. So we've had feedback that we will get around $1,200 to $1,500 a week, and based on 2.3 million, that would be about right. Don't actually know, by the way.
I'd say it's
that, but that's about right. Am I about right?
I'd say it's low 2s. As far as an investment, do you think that's good?
Low 2s. In terms of cash flow, no. But the one thing that Fendleton does have is the highest capital growth rate, or one of the highest capital growth rates in Christchurch. So there is that as well.
So this is a high growth property rather than a yield?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So what kind of investor would this suit?
Someone who's probably incredibly passive, isn't worried or is possibly paying cash for the property or not mortgaging a lot of it so that the financial burden of having to top up every week wasn't so large. Or possibly someone who's wants a house in Christchurch but isn't going to live in it the whole time.
And tell us about your architect, because it's not a local architect.
No, so this was designed in England by a British architect, Ben Pentreath, and he specialises in new classical architecture. So that sort of covers a variety of different styles, but a lot of Georgian and other classical styles. We definitely prefer this like Georgian colonial revival style, which is based on northeastern American 1700s pre-Declaration of Independence homes, and it was sort of the USA's take on Georgian houses from back home. They lost the style after the Declaration of Independence because they were off the Brits, so they came up with their own style. But this really is that. And in the 1920s and 30s, when they revived this, hence the name Georgian Colonial Revival, it was really harking back to those like early seaside houses in Maine and Massachusetts and those sorts of areas. You know, the American Christmas movie houses. You can just see them with little lights, can't you, and a reindeer on the roof.
Yeah, too bad that doesn't make a good investment.
Putting lights on the house?
Who do you think is going to rent this home?
Well, our feedback from property managers in the area is that there is a shortage of high-end rentals in Christchurch. There's a lot of 1 and 2 bedroom, like no car park houses in and around the central city, but there definitely is a lack of the higher end stuff for people, you know, between homes and that sort of thing. I'm certainly not suggesting that 7 of these would be investments, because with the types of people that we've had approaching us, they're mostly owner occupiers. But I think the market could certainly sustain 1 or 2 of these to be investments.
And you think there's going to be a tenant pool for that?
There is a small tenant pool for that.
Based
yes.
on?
Based on the feedback from the property managers in the area.
You've done research as well?
I have, yes.
Vinny, I want to understand that Brooksfield is a robust company, a developer. They're going to be around for a long time because that's important to our clients. Tell me why Brooksfield is robust.
One of the main things we do is we don't start building before we have sold all the houses in a development. So that really keeps us secure from the point of view that we're not left holding houses once they're built and having to pay interest costs on those houses, because there sort of comes a point where your interest cost mounts up so much that it's taken over what you're ever going to sell the house for. That's kind of the most important thing that we would always stick to with any development, which keeps us secure.
That's all very well, Vinny, but how does that experience feel for the person that purchases the first property, not the 7th or 8th?
So if he's waiting for 12 months for the rest of them to sell.
Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yep, understand.
There's delays.
Yes, there can be. So, but we do usually find that, well, in the past we've certainly found that all of our developments have sold out within a time frame that suits.
How long?
Usually 2 to 3 months. Most of our developments would sell out, which gives us time, because usually when we're releasing a development, we're in the early stages of a resource consent, so it still needs to be put through council and questions answered, and then we actually receive the consent and the building consent and can start. And what we find is when we start selling and when we receive consent, that time delay there usually lines up with selling the development down.
So if you're selling properties before resource consent and there are changes, what happens then?
We do have provision to make small changes that don't affect the layout or the usability or the value of the property.
What if it does though?
We, to a certain point, the purchasers are able to cancel their sale. We do have a really good understanding of the district plan, and because we've done quite a lot now, we understand what
Even
can,
though you're using
can't be
someone
done.
from overseas to design them?
Yeah, so they do the overseas, Ben Pentreath, he does the initial schemes and like the layouts and it's kind of what you see here, but then we have an in-house draftsperson who turns them into working drawings that are like applicable with New Zealand standard and New Zealand councils. So he doesn't need to have too much of a knowledge because we kind of set it up for him. You know, he knows that we have to be X amount off the stream, X amount off the road, they can only be so high and only have so much site coverage.
So 500 properties, something must have gone wrong somewhere along the way. What's gone wrong and how have you dealt with it? What have you learned from it?
Yeah, probably the biggest thing that's gone wrong would be delays, like during COVID when materials were harder to get. That would probably be the biggest
What
thing.
about windows? Didn't you have some troubles with
windows,
that?
God, we did. Goodness, sorry. So we used to import windows from the US and actually a really good manufacturer out of the US, but the guy importing them into New Zealand for the last sort of 6 months of ordering was taking our money and not ordering. So yeah, they stole quite a lot of money off us, but the issue that caused wasn't so much the theft of the money, although that is an issue, but the delays of the houses that the windows were for.
Did that affect the buyers?
No, none at the moment.
Do you do more due diligence on your suppliers, or do you not do any due
We
diligence?
do, and
on
actually,
suppliers?
interestingly, that window supplier had been supplying us windows without much of an issue for around 3 years. And we'd ordered hundreds of houses worth of windows off him. So, yeah, I think he may have succumbed to some sort of addiction, possibly.
You had an interesting product offering out a couple of years ago with the headline, "Move to Christchurch and we'll pay your mortgage for a year."
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that. How did it go?
Well, I actually read a story about like some failing Italian town, not that Christchurch is that, but that was like paying people 20,000 euros to come and buy a house in their town so long as they lived there for a year or something. And I thought, that's kind of like a crazy idea. People need to move in Christchurch. And it just happened at the same time when I was visiting a friend in Auckland, and I was staying out in a suburban area, like a new suburban area quite far out of the city, and they had houses in the area where it was $1 million, and it really wasn't a great lifestyle. And I thought, man, people are actually living here. Like, why aren't they living in Christchurch? So those two things kind of like sparked an idea, which was to pay people's mortgage if they moved to Christchurch.
Would you do that on this one?
No.
Why?
The mortgage would be quite large, I think, on this one. Yeah. I mean, in a sense, actually, Andrew, it would be equivalent to the purchase price, though.
Do people end up paying more if that's the hook to get them in the door?
No, they don't. I mean, all of our houses, for one of our houses in our usual sort of developments, our $650,000 to $800,000 developments, they're incredibly comparable price-wise to competitors for houses of the same amenity in terms of bedrooms, bathrooms, garages. We do have a name of being more expensive, but that's because people think we would be because the houses are so much nicer. But when you actually go through and like look at them and compare them, they're often extreme, because we can't sell, buyers aren't dumb. They're going to go see our houses, they're going to go see the other guy's houses, they're going to compare them all, and there's only so much that pretty cottage will do for you to make you pay more. So we just have to be the same but better.
So what do you reckon the top two things are that set Brooksfield apart from your competitors?
Even though we're quite large, we're still quite nimble in the fact that we can sell out a development, build it and move on. We don't have a hangover of old houses or anything like that. And then the main thing that sets us apart, though, which I think hardly any developers in New Zealand are focusing on, is the product. They're actually houses that people want to move into. Like the dream house in New Zealand is a timber weatherboard villa for most people. And so
I don't know if that's true.
What is the dream?
Weatherboard house that requires a lot of maintenance. You think that's the dream?
Love it. Yeah, they still love it. New Zealanders love the villa. They do. They want to put a pool out the back and a garage underneath and stuff. But you drive around Auckland and show me the most coveted houses. They're not the gross leaking mansions on Paratai Drive. They're the villas in Herne Bay and Freeman's Bay and Remuera.
Do you think you're maybe missing who New Zealanders are?
No, I don't think so. Am I?
I don't know.
What's your dream house?
A bit upper echelon.
Yeah, well, everyone's aiming for that though, aren't they? Everyone's aiming for a nicer house.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Well, would you guys all like a nicer house? I'd like a nicer house.
I think what I'm saying is there is maybe the level that you're comparing to isn't necessarily the same standard of your average New Zealander.
Oh, I'm certainly not suggesting that the average New Zealander could afford a villa in Freeman's Bay.
Yeah.
No.
It's time to do a deal. Remember, if 2 out of 3 deal makers say yes to the deal, you at home will have the chance to invest in his development.
Well, Vinny, you know the next step. Now we've got to decide if we're going to do a deal. And 2 new deal makers, I want to give them the honours first. Mickey, do you want to kick us off? What do you think?
Well, Vinny, I know the location very well. I know Fendleton has a track record for capital growth. So it's definitely a tick for future saleability. But from an investment point of view, it just doesn't hit our model. So it's a big yes on you as a developer in the product, but a no for the deal.
Thank you, Mickey.
I've actually really enjoyed your presentation. The things that I'm looking for is making sure that the developer has got good character, they've got the skills and experience, and that they're going to complete the project so that it's actually a deliverable product to our investors. So for that reason, I'm actually going to say yes to the deal.
Thank you, Vanessa.
So it all comes down to the Prince of Property.
Vinny, always the most entertaining of developers to come on, and always the most honest about what you do or don't know about a particular project and where your area of expertise are. I think your product is exceptional. I think for an investor, the numbers are way out, so it's not a deal for me.
Thank you, Andrew.
So Vinny walks away without a deal this season. The deal makers don't think that these properties are a good investment. Let's see how he's feeling. So it's a no today, Vinny. Was that your best performance?
I think it was certainly better than season one's.
So not the right fit for an investor, but maybe an owner-occupier.
I think so. I think they'll go really well with the owner-occupier market.
Now, a couple of new deal makers in this time. Who was the toughest? Who was the tamest?
Well, actually, Vanessa was the toughest, but she was the one that said yes, which surprised me.
Okay, and what makes Vanessa the gatekeeper the toughest?
She was. She just asked some hard questions, and there was no holes barred with her.
Okay, it's a no today, but maybe we'll see you back
You will.
in season 3 of The Deal.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vinny. To see all Dealmaker approved properties, go to thedeal.co.